let me just say something about these symbols. These symbols are from the International Phonetic Alphabet, IPA. You're probably familiar with them because they're used in a lot of textbooks. One thing I find that people often misunderstand about these symbols is that they think they refer to a very exact sound. Whereas if we're using them in teaching, we're using this is a phonemic chart. These are phonemes, and each symbol refers to a range of possible sounds.
Pronunciation is a skill. It needs a lot of repetitive work, and imitation is a way we've always tried to learn things. If you learn to play tennis, you imitate a good tennis player. If you learn to play the violin, you watch people playing the violin and you try to imitate them. Listen and repeat. This imitation of a model, I think, is still the baseline. And if we start working on the sh sound, and the students can satisfactorily say, Sasha's doing a presentation on the international situation, and they're getting this right, I don't think we need to complicate anybody's life any further.
So some of the things we had here, your native language, some of you said this one. We also mentioned in the list that you were coming up with the age factor. The age factor, so how old you are when you start learning the language. Very good. Your amount of exposure and the kind of exposure. So it's the quality of the exposure. How much exposure are you getting? Some of you mentioned here phonetic ability. Some of you mentioned attitude and aptitudes, or attitudes and identities. And then also here this motivation and concern for pronunciation. And I myself, as a Spanish speaker who learned Spanish at a late age in life, I find that I'm sort of like, if you can understand me, I'll get by. And I tend not to pay as much attention to my pronunciation as I should. And so again, it's more attitude than capacity very often.
So, what is the problem that we have when teaching phonics to students, or when teaching our children how to decode the phonetic codes, the phonetic or the phonological English system? The problem is that English is not a transparent alphabetic code, right? That is like the Spanish one, in which A is always A, M is always M, and N is always N. In English, it is not like that. So English code is not transparent, and there are lots of different sounds that can be spelled in different ways, or different spellings that can sound in a same way. All right. So for example, the long, as you have there in the example, the long E, what we call long E, which is not really long, it's a tense vowel. E can be spelled E, consonant E, A, etc., etc., right? So there are many different ways in how to spell it, right? The problem is that in English we have 44 sounds, depending on the author. Some authors say 44, some others 42, but between 42 and 44, but we'll have 26 letters in the alphabet to represent them. And here comes the problem. So once we want to represent all those sounds, we have to start making combinations with all those letters, all right, to be able to represent all the 44 sounds we've got in English. And here is when the problem comes, all right?